Halloween and Expedition Texas really could go hand in hand. Why? Because almost every abandoned building, old house, or ghost town we set foot in has some sort of ghost story attached to it. We don't usually tell those stories, but this seems like a good time to bring them up. This week on Expedition Texas, we celebrate Halloween with some of our creepiest expeditions.
Texas is full of lost history, from lost cemeteries to abandoned buildings, from the infamous to the obscure. Hitch a ride and travel across the Lone Star State, looking for hints of Texas' colorful past, our lost history. This is Expedition Texas, and we're gonna find it.
Creepy stories are common when you make your living exploring old abandoned buildings. Most of the time, these stories have to do with ghosts, but not always. Take, for example, the face-to-face encounter with a monster, told by Jeff Stewart in our Bigfoot episode.
I was looking for mayhaws to make jelly down in a dried-up slough bed. And I had walked down this dried-up slough bed, and I got to a certain point, and I heard a crash to the left of me. And I walked over to look, and there was a limb probably about big around as a little bit bigger around than a Coke can, laying on the ground about 2.5, 3 foot long. And I'm looking up in the trees to see where it came from, and there's nothing in the canopy overhead big enough for this limb to have come from. At that time, I hear a loud thud behind me, and on that slough bed, the top was dry, but the bottom was still kind of a little quaky, and I felt it when it hit the ground, and I spun around, and when I did, behind me on the ground was, for lack of a better term, it was somebody. They had jumped out of the tree, landed on the ground, and they had, like when you jump from a height and you cushion yourself with your legs, and their rear end was sitting on their heels, hands were flat on the ground. And I'm standing there, I'm looking at this going, man, boy, what in the world is going on here? And I reached for my gun. I was carrying a rifle over my shoulder. I reached for it, and something just said, it's not right. So I reached for the camera that I had, so I wanted to try to get a picture, and this is all taking place in a matter of seconds. At that point in time, it took off running. And as it ran, it took its hands and reached in front of it and would pull at the same time as it ran. And it covered about a 60-yard opening in the woods in 3 to 4 seconds, faster than I've ever seen a football player. I played college football and stuff, and I never saw anybody run that fast. And I went back and I told my dad, I was like, you're not gonna believe this? And told him what happened, and he was like, nobody's ever going to believe that. And I was like, well, it happened. Now, describing the creature that I saw both times, not this big gorilla that you hear people describe. And when I hear people describe a monkey in the woods, kind of Bigfoot, I cringe, because I've been face to face with these things twice. And neither time did it look like a monkey or a gorilla. It looked like a person.
The Magnolia Hotel in Seguin predated the Texas Revolution and is regularly opened up to ghost tours. Of course, we ended up in the exact location of one of many sightings there. What's up with all the baby toys and crib and stroller and all that?
Well, Itzy was actually a young girl, and she passed away here, and they say that her spirit still resides, and she actually sings the Itsy Bitsy Spider songs whenever a guest comes in that she wants to entertain.
Really? Okay. From ghosts to monsters, this is a look at our creepy expeditions. Coming up next.
And they could watch when their loved one was getting ready to be hung on the hanging tree.
we're revisiting some of our creepy expeditions here on Expedition Texas. We left off with one of the spooky stories of the Magnolia Hotel in Seguin, Texas. The building predates the Texas Revolution, so ghost stories are abundant. But some of the stories are just plain morbid. Take, for example, this room.
You're actually walking in the room that we call the prisoner's room.
The prisoner's room. Is it they house prisoners in here?
No, they actually house the prisoner's family in here. Whenever there was going to be a hanging, they would have the prisoners in the jail directly outside this window, and they could watch when their loved one was getting ready to be hung on the hanging tree.
And who can forget our trip to the old Hillsboro fire station to meet the friendly fireman, Harvey, who just happens to be a ghost.
Harvey was a fireman for the city of Hillsboro in 1906 who was killed in an accident while driving the horse cart at the time.
Really?
And legend says he never really has left our building. Our building was once the fire station for the city of Hillsboro.
But Chris didn't expect me to take just his word for it. He brought along a coworker who's seen a lot more than he has.
There was one time when a lady was out there for a class and she was from a different town and she had never been to our building before, and she came tapping on the door closest to my office and she said, "Who is he?" And I said, "Who's who?" She said, "Your ghost." I said, "Why did you say that?" And she says, "Well, because I've been feeling the chill the whole time I've been out here in the class." But she says, "I went in to use the ladies' room before I was left," and she says he was standing there in the ladies' room.
Oh.
In full uniform. Oh. And I said, "Well, what did you do?" And she said, "I just yelled at him, 'Go away,' and he kind of just disintegrated."
Wow.
And so I asked her to follow me up front, and we do have a picture of Harvey up front in the office where she had never been before. And she got about halfway into the doorway and she just points at the picture and goes, "Well, that's him, that's him."
Harvey was killed when his fire cart tipped over in this intersection. He was buried in a nearby cemetery. We found both locations, but then decided to go visit the fire station itself, which is now known as Hillsboro City Hall. So Barb, why is it that Harvey is confined to upstairs?
Because that was the fireman's area. This is their quarters up here.
Wow, this is like it's been untouched for a long time.
It has been, yeah. They moved out a long time ago.
What are y'all using it for now? Just like storage?
Yes,
It was on this floor where Chris and Barb said Harvey had been spotted many times. In fact, there was one room that had more activity than any other, and they decided to send me in there to see if I could get a reaction out of Harvey, the friendly ghost.
Good luck, Bob. We'll see you later.
Okay.
we hope.
Yeah.
Bye, y'all.
Maybe.
Bye, Jeff.
Maybe. Call
Bye,
me if
y'all.
you need me.
So I got a question.
Ask away.
Is there anything I'm supposed to do or say? Because I've never done this ghost hunting thing before. I've been on some, but I've never actually done it.
I haven't either, but Barb just suggested just say out loud, "Harvey, if you're here, give me a sign."
Okay, Harvey, if you're here, give me a sign. I tried what you suggested, and the only thing that I've noticed really is it seems like the lights dim and come back up.
Most likely, Bob, what you're seeing is the flag flapping in front of the light, most likely.
Chris's logic made sense, but I wanted to put him in the chair and let him check it out for himself. And he saw the exact same thing.
And then I asked immediately after it did, it went back to full power, and I said, "Harvey, if that was you, will you do it again?" And as soon as I said that, it happened again.
Oh, that's cool. So we may or may not have had an encounter with the ghost of Kid Harvey. But coming up next, we're going to show you some places we've been that have great ghost stories attached to them that we never heard. This week, we're exploring our creepy expeditions here on Expedition Texas. We've spent a bit of time in Mineral Wells, Texas of late, but we were first drawn there by the story of the Baker Hotel that looms large over the landscape. While ghost stories aren't usually why we explore a property, they inevitably come up, especially when something like this happens.
He did come back on occasion, and when he did, he'd stay here in the Baker Suite.
Okay.
He was found dead in the Baker Suite, and
Really?
rumor has it that he was found dead right here in front of the fireplace, right about where you're standing now.
Oh. But the Baker Hotel is home to some of the greatest ghost stories in Texas. T.D. Baker himself is believed to haunt the Baker Suite on floor 11. Baker is said to have died in this suite, leaving him to walk the halls of his masterpiece endlessly. Tour guides always knock on the doors of the Baker Suite in order not to anger him by entering. Witnesses have claimed the entire 11th floor smells of cigar smoke, matching the habit of the late T.D. Baker. Whenever a tour enters a suite, small items often disappear from guests' handbags and pockets. The tour guides will find them laying on the floor of Baker's room hours later when it's time to close up for the night. Baker was believed to have a mistress, whom he kept on the 7th floor. It is said that she jumped from the window of the 7th floor to her death. The reason for her suicide is unknown, but her fate as a permanent guest of the Baker is sealed. Some say the affair became too much for her, so she decided to take her own life. She's been spotted by countless patrons, and her lavender perfume is difficult to miss. Many visitors have spotted the spirit of the mistress. Her red hair, piercing green eyes, and lavender perfume is unmistakable. She was first seen in the 1950s by a hotel worker. More recently, a maid of the hotel found broken glass scattered all over the room on the 7th floor, stained with the same red lipstick her ghost has been seen wearing. The mistress will roam to different floors. If she gets restless, tour guides will hear the sounds of her high heels walking all around the 1st floor. She's a flirtatious ghost, too, who will touch and poke male tourists that she fancies. Mistress Baker is by far one of the most active spirits in the hotel, next to Baker himself. Murder. It's a chilling thing no matter how you frame the story. And nothing chilled us more than this story of murder at the Pitch and Putt Golf Course in Austin, Texas, from season 1 of our show. There was a murder that happened here.
Yes.
Lyndon B. Johnson's press secretary actually committed a murder on this property.
Right.
In the clubhouse.
Right.
Can you show us where that happened?
Sure.
There's still some evidence of where that happened, right?
Yes.
So is this the original building from 1950?
Yes. This is still the same building.
When you go in, it's a small building. You look to your right, there's a counter over there where you go in and pay to go play golf. That's where Mr. Kinzer was when Wallace walked in.
Malcolm came in and shot him, I think 2 or 3 times with a .22, so it wasn't like he just...
Yeah.
And then he ran over here into the corner and this is a mess back here. And then this is where the blood spatter marks, still all these little X's.
Lee opens the door and there are marks on the door where the blood spatter was, and if you look real close, there's even drops of blood still there on the door. Now, did police come in and make these?
Yes. Yes.
And I understand that there's also like a trash can where a bullet ricocheted off the trash can.
Mm-hmm.
Is that in here as well?
Yes.
Wow. It's very rare that something tragic like that happens and you can still find traces of it 60 years later, but we have evidence in this building of this murder taking place in cold blood. We have a confession that this actually happened. We have Wallace, who is implicated in murders later on. Never went to jail. It's pretty interesting, the bits of history that are preserved right there in that building in downtown Austin. Wow, so here we are, the graves of Mr. and Mrs. Fuller, the Reverend and Mrs. Fuller. Fuller Park, a mysterious property rumored to contain a cemetery, remains of an old house, and strangely enough, monkey cages. Our guide is Rich Flowers. There's a massive stone fence about waist high all the way around Fuller Park. There's a big entrance gate. There's the side gate where we met Rich, and what looks like a beautiful walking trail going down through the trees. Well, one thing I can say for this, it's really pretty out here.
It is, and that's the shame of it, that it's not put to some public use.
So we walk down into the park a little ways, we go around a few bends, and then we come to the cemetery. Wow, so here we are, the graves of Mr. and Mrs. Fuller, the Reverend and Mrs. Fuller.
You can see they're badly overgrown, even more than when I was here 2 years ago.
The headstones were knocked over, there was graffiti, but these massive chains that surrounded the graves. Look at the size of the chains.
Yeah, that was one of the most impressive things to me, as I mentioned earlier.
Where would chain like this come from? What would this be used for?
Like I say, one that size would be something you drop an anchor on a ship.
And look here, we got an actual indicator of when this was actually erected.
Yeah, 1934, which would indicate that it was here and ready for Virginia when she indeed passed away. Woohoo, spider web. What the heck? What the heck is that? It's covered with iron. Looks like it has part of a tree stump or something that had grown up through it. As you can see, the pastor stone is propped up against the fence here in the back. Has the inscription on it, "I've fought the good fight. I've finished my course and I've kept the faith." He was 69 when he passed away.
You said, and I've heard the rumors, there are actually cages down here that most think were cages for monkeys.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to go check these cages out, and I guess it's down that long, scary road right there, huh?
Yeah.
All right, let's go. So we took off walking down this trail, and we come to basically a dead end. There's no entrance, no further trail into the woods, except for just a small trail that we passed a little ways back, and Rich said that wasn't the trail. Rich was getting very tired, and I think he had had enough exploring that area, so Rich decided to give it up and head back. Instead of abusing our guide, we're going to tell Rich, thank you so much for coming out and doing this. We really appreciate the story that you did on the park and helping keeping the memory of this place alive. But most of all, thank you for coming out and helping us out on our expedition.
Yeah, my pleasure, and I hope that you find all the things you need.
But we had to stay because he said that there was a monkey cage there, definitely, and we had to find the monkey cage. We weren't leaving without doing that. You got to wonder how many people think we're crazy when we drag them off into the woods to go find things like this. But we've just come across another small trail, so we're going to take off down this and see if we can find the monkey cages. We looked everywhere that he said to go, except the little path that went up that went deeper into the woods that he said it wasn't down there. We had walked down it, it sort of dead-ended, so we didn't go any further. Okay, I've learned two things about this show so far. One, I'm not paying my cameraman enough. Sorry, Joe. And the other, I don't remember the second one now. Let's just go find this thing. And suddenly I see through the trees what looks like the roof. Holy cow. Got a steel center post. But here it is, the monkey cages at Fuller Park. We finally found it after a long expedition into Fuller Park. We finally found the monkey cage at Fuller Park. Somewhere out in those woods at Fuller Park is a monkey cage, and we found it. From strange properties with abandoned graves and monkey cages to ghosts, monsters, and mayhem. At one point or another, we run across them all here on Expedition Texas. And while not all the lost legends we uncover are creepy, there's the occasional mystery out there lurking in some old building. And on Expedition Texas, we're going to find it.